Hey guys, welcome back. In this tutorial, I'm going to walk you through the interface of the two Kolor software, so Autopano Video Pro and Autopano Giga. I'm going to show you a little bit some of the tools that you are going to be using and how to access them. So let's get right to it. So the first thing to understand is that these are two software that handle different parts of the workflow. To keep it really simple, Autopano Video Pro is going to handle the whole video solution workflow. So anything that needs interpolation between images, transitions, anything that need to take into account the fact that it's a video that you are working on is going to be handled by Autopano Video Pro. The stitching in itself and the work on how the video are combined is going to be done using JPEGs and is going to be done using Autopano Giga. Autopano Giga is a photo stitching software to start with, but we are using it in the video workflow, and this is where the control points happen, and this is where exactly you refine the way the video are stitched together. So once you have imported the footage from the Omni importer, you're going to see that you have your folders. They have the different names that you decided for them. And inside each of the folder, you're going to have the MP4s, the original video files that you copied. These are copied in full. And you're also going to have, if you've asked for a render, you're going to have a render. And you'll also have a .cava file. So cava is the Kolor Autopano video files, and this is the one we are going to open right now. So if I double click on my cava file, it opens Autopano Video Pro. So here is what you get when you open a file that you imported with the Omni importer. So on the side here, you have your original videos in full, and here we already have a stitch because the Omni importer stitched the video for us. At the bottom, we have 4 timelines. These are called horizon, stitch, colors, and masks. You see that some things happened here, and these are the things that we chose to have with the Omni importer. So if I wanted to have stabilization, I would have a little bit more information here on my horizon timeline. But here for this shot, I only asked to do the color harmonization every 5 seconds. So I only have here my color timeline that has a transition. So this is one of the first things that you can note regarding Autopano Video Pro is that when you have a green bar like this is a transition. The transition is interpolation of images between 2 different states, 2 or more different states actually. So here we have something here that says state 1, and this blue bar goes all the way through, which means that we only have one state for the horizon throughout the whole video. This means that the way the horizon is oriented is not changing all throughout the video. That's the same thing here for the stitching and same thing here for the masks. At the top of our timelines here, you see that we have 2 different bars. The red one is the rendering bar. So this is the part of the video that is going to be rendered at the end of the process. Beneath it, we have a blue bar, which is a selection area, a selected area. So these 2 can move independently. And if you want a pro tip, you can use F. So with F, you can maybe change the size of your rendered area and press F, and it's going to make the select area the same size as the rendering area. If you want to do the opposite, maybe you want to work on this area with the selected area, you just do Shift F. And now it's the rendering area that's going to be the same size as the selected area. So this is one first tip for you. For the rest of the interface, we here have the play area where I can start previewing my shot. I can pause it, I can go frame by frame, I can go to the in-out. Here you see that I have my time code. I can also go to a frame view, so I can see for exactly at the frame number. Here we have a few options as well. So this will allow you to see exactly the number of each of the cameras. And this grid here will help you try to stabilize your horizon and straighten it and make it look better. And you'll also know that in this area is the front of the sphere. When you are looking into a headset, the first direction you are looking at is going to be this area right there. So I don't really need now, with the Omni importer, I already have my real-time preview. I know that I have a perfect synchronization. So actually the input videos is not really useful for me. So I can close it. If I need to grab it again, I can just go on view and click on input video and I will see it again. Now, what do we have up here? Well, basically the workflow is going to be happening in the same way that you have the icons here. So you have here the first icon is synchronization. This is something that we don't need with the Omni, but if you happen to work with any other rig, because the Kolor Autopano Videos Pro software is completely device agnostic, it can work with any type of rig, with any camera. You can still use it with a non-synchronized rig, which means that you can use the synchronization here. The way it works is that you are going to find in your videos the point in time when you have a synchronization signal. So if we open up the input videos, you would be scrubbing here through the footage up until you find a point where you were doing maybe a signal, a clap, or anything else. And you're going to find this, and maybe let's say here that it's at our 20-second point. You would then ask the software to look maybe for 10 seconds here, and what this means is that it's going to look for the synchronization points in all of the videos 10 seconds before the marker and 10 seconds after. So you're going to be looking actually at a 20-second range when you are searching for 10 seconds, and then you're going to be looking for use audio to synchronize. It's going to try to find the clap in all of the 6 videos, and it's going to tell you if it found it or not. If it didn't, maybe you need to search for a wider area, or you need to find another signal, and then you can adjust that also camera by camera, frame by frame, or by time. Once you find your synchronization point, you're going to want to click on apply here. If you don't click on apply, it won't update the real-time preview and the synchronization is not going to be effective, which will show if you start having movements between cameras into your 360 video. But here with the Omni, we don't really need that. The next step would be to use Stitch. So here we have a few different options. So again, with the Omni, we don't need to use the stitching right now. We might want to use it again to refine the stitching and do a few modifications, but we will go over there a bit later. Just really quickly, here you have so stitch as and stitch at and the RMS curve. So what does mean? Well, the stitch as will allow you to select a type of setting or type of camera. So we have a few built-in presets. The most widely used is going to be the GoPro Hero 3 Plus and 4, obviously. But you have other GoPros. You also have presets for modified lenses for GoPro, so Entania lenses or Izuga lenses. But you can also use a lens model, and when you're going to click on Stitch, it's going to ask you the focal and the lens type. So if you are using a DSLR or a professional camera like a RED camera, you can also stitch those. And then we have here the Stitch as template. So we can use a .pano file to stitch the footage together, and we can now also create some user templates. But in our case, we will be using the GoPro Hero 3 Plus and 4 because we are using a GoPro Hero 4. The second part we have here is stitch at. So we have two options. The current position is that the software is only going to grab one frame out of the footage you have, and it is going to stitch it together and use that stitch, apply it to the full video. So if you say stitch at current position, well, it's going to stitch exactly where the playhead is. So here, in that case, it would be stitching exactly at around 20 seconds or at frame 625. It would use that frame, stitch for this exact situation. The other option we have is stitch at current selection. So the selection is this blue bar. Here we would then ask him to use a few positions. What exactly does that mean? Well, if here I say stitch at current selection using 5 position, the software is going to find 5 different frames here, and it's going to use that, create JPEGs out of those frames and stitch those JPEGs, and then use those values to create a stitch that's going to be applied to the whole video. So you're going to have still only one state of stitching. You're only going to have this one stitch that's going to be applied throughout this whole video, but it's going to be done using information from 5 different positions, 5 different moments in the video. Let's just have a quick look how it would look if we say, like, let's use 3 different positions using GoPro Hero 4, and we have our selection here. Let's say we are going to be using only this selection, and I'm going to click on stitch here. Now what you're going to see here is that the software is going to start creating some new JPEGs, some new temporary frames. It's going to send those frames into the Autopano Giga engine and use those to create a good stitch throughout. So here we now have 3 different frames per camera, and it's going to try to do 3 different 360 degrees photos, and it's going to then use this information to have all those control points, all this information to find where the overlapping areas are. How do you combine those 6 videos together? And it's going to then send this information back into AVP and create a full 360 video. So you're going to see here we have our progression bar that's going down here. It's going to go up until the end, and then it's going to destroy part of the images here, and you're going to get an updated stitch. So there you have it. We have our stitch that's done. Here we also have another thing which is called the RMS curve, but we will talk a little bit more about that later. Just to give you a heads up, the RMS value is basically the confidence the software has in its own stitch. So if it knows the stitching is good, it found these control points, these points in the image where it knows the pixels are roughly the same. The RMS value is an indication of how well are those points aligned in the overlapping area. So the lower the value, the better it is. So the RMS curve is a way of seeing how well your stitch goes and if there are some changes over time, and we'll talk about that in a future lesson. Next up, we have here the stabilization. The stabilization is not the same kind of stabilization we are talking about when we are talking about the Karma Grip or the Hero 5 electronic image stabilization. The stabilization in 360 videos is because we have collectively decided in 360 degrees videos that the movements from right to left and up and down would be left to the person watching the video in a headset. And that means that you don't want to have the sphere moving over time without the control of the person looking at the experience. That would be really nauseating, and that would be really bad for the experience. So stabilization is going to do that. It's going to analyze the images, analyze the horizon, make sure that the horizon stays consistent throughout the whole video, and that the front of the video is always staying at the same place. And then you're going to be able to play around with that using the horizon timeline. But to begin with, you're going to have to stabilize the footage. As soon as you have movement into your video, you're going to need to use that stabilization. So you would use the compute motion, and then you would adjust the compensation level. You're going to see here also that when we are computing the stabilization with an Omni, we are enabling a little bit of rolling shutter correction. So this is also something that you might want to do when you are using an Omni. Next up, we have the color parts. So the color here has already been done with the Omni importer, but the color here is the color harmonization. So it's harmonizing the exposure settings, but also the color correction and color compensation between the different cameras. It's not doing grading. It's really doing an harmonization so that you have one consistent exposure and color throughout the 6 different cameras, because sometimes you're going to have one camera pointing at the sun, the other pointing at some shadows, and you would have some very different settings for those 2 cameras. So the color setting is going to be able to correct that. Here we have done it, it has adjusted it over time. So we have done an auto transition every 5 seconds and then compute automatic color transition. Again, here in that particular case, we would only be doing this auto transition in the selected area. Anytime you're going to have a selected area and you're going to do something that changes over time, it's always going to be applied only in that area that's underneath the blue bar. So we also have here the exposure compensation level, which would allow us to overexpose or underexpose the video. But again, the 6 videos at the same time. And here again, we have the blending settings. So the blending is basically the same thing as feathering in something like Photoshop. You have 2 different settings, which is smooth and sharp. The sharp is basically, it's really self-explanatory. So the sharp is going to do a strong cut between 2 of the videos, and smooth is going to do something that's, well, much smoother. It's going to blend a lot more the 2 images, the 2 videos. There's one thing to note when you are using smooth is that the mask edition is not going to be available. Masks are not going to be really efficient because there's so much blending in the overlapping areas. The cuts between the images are not as strong, which means that when you try to use masks to change this and to have an influence on that, it's not going to be available, which is why when you click on apply on smooth here, the masking area is going to turn gray. And finally here we have stereo, which allows you to have some changes and adjust some of the settings in the stereo mode. When you are using stereo mode, you can then change what camera is doing what, and you can also have an effect on the convergence and the different renderings and the interocular percentage. And once you have all those settings done, you then can adjust the rendering. So here, when you click on render, the values that you have here are going to be the maximum size allowed by your footage. Underneath, you have the maximum size allowed by the output settings, because here we are using an H.264 MP4. With UHD TV, the maximum size is going to be 3840 by 1920. If we were to use 4K, we could go to 4096 by 2048, which was one of our preferred settings when we are working with MP4s. And you also can use Cineform or ProRes to have a much higher quality of footage when you are exporting your videos. Another thing to note is you have here frames per second, bitrate, aspect ratio, and audio source, which means that you can select what camera is providing the audio for your final video. If you click on apply here and then save your .cava file, you can then drag it into the batch rendering. If you click here on render, you will send it straight to the batch rendering section here, and then you're going to be able to render some files, so you can launch your batch rendering with a bunch of different cavas that you've been working on and let the computer run for the night, for example. So this is the Kolor Autopano Video Pro interface. Now let's go really quickly into the Kolor Autopano Giga interface. And how do you access that? Well, you click on Edit here, and it's gonna start processing. You're gonna have here a progression bar, and once this is done, you're gonna see Autopano Giga start to open. So now Autopano Giga is opening. And here is the first window I'm facing when I'm opening Autopano Giga. Again, here I'm going to click on Edit. And Autopano Giga is a software that's really powerful, and like any powerful software, it has a lot of options. But as I said earlier, Autopano Giga is also a photo stitching software. So for video, there are really just a few options that you need to know. The first one, if we take it here into order, is going to be the vertical line tool. The vertical line tool is a great tool to allow you to straighten your horizon. So you would click on vertical line and then just drag and find a few different places where you're going to have some vertical lines, and you know that those are vertical, and then you click on OK, and it's going to straighten the horizon. Actually, the lines I chose are not really that great, some really great references, but you get the idea. It's a much easier way to sort of understand what's happening and see the different elements. And sometimes it's going to allow you to straighten your horizon in a much more efficient manner. As you can see here, when you click on that icon, you're going to have the move. So you can move either the full panel or you can move picture by picture if you have any particular reason to do that. But I don't. Here we have the control points editor, and the control points editor works with two different windows. In the main window we have our mesh, so these are the images, and in between we have the different control points. We here have some more advanced options, and we are going to go through all of this in a future lesson. And then here we in the second window we have the actual control points. So these are all the links. These are the links between the images. The links are these lines here. So if I select this link, for example, and then I go back into my image, I see my two original images and the control points that link them together. And so I can have here the different images with the different links that are available. Or if I just don't click on anything, I can see all the links that are happening in my 360 video and the control points that are in there. And then the last really useful tool that you're going to be using in Autopano Giga is the mask editor. When you are using it, you click here on this little preview button and it's going to show you the different camera views. And with the mask editor, if you are using the sharp blending option, you are going to be able to move around those frontiers. And the mask editor is going to allow you to move that line around and use more of one video or another. Once in Autopano Giga, I'm happy with what I've done. I can then just save by clicking here. And everything that I've done is going to go back into AVP. So you see that here it's reflecting and it has applied the different changes I've done into APG.